All right, welcome to our Week 4 edition of the Coach McVay Show, presented by Microsoft Surface, presented by Copilot Plus PC. I'm J.B. along with the head coach of your Los Angeles Rams, who are now 2-1. And Sean, I think there's actually a case to be made that you've got a better team coming back from Philadelphia, or better than I appreciated or realized than you were at 2-0. Is there a case to be made there?
I love this team more than I did, before we played that game. And I think there's no question. I love the style of play. I love the toughness. I love the physicality that you saw really from, both of our fronts. I think the resolve, the ability to be able to just keep playing the next snap. And, sometimes it doesn't go down the way that you want. We had our chances. You give them credit for being able to make some of those plays, but to jump out to a 26-7 lead, to have the ebbs and flows, what I was pleased with was, in spite of them being able to build some momentum, we end up getting a field goal block from 36 yards out that could have put us up 8. They go down the field. They make a good 91-yard drive. We stopped a 2-point conversion. And I don't think there was any doubt from the offensive guys that they were going to go get themselves in field goal position. I thought Matthew orchestrated a really good drive in a 2-minute. And if you pause that game right with 3 seconds left and you say, all right, what are you saying about this game before you know what really happened, even though this play dictates the outcome, you have to be honest with yourself that there was 160 snaps that occurred before that 161st where they block it. We don't end up making that kick. And so I think our team is going to respond the right way. Man, it stings. We all wanted to be able to win that football game. Sometimes it doesn't go down the way that you want, but I love this group. I'm excited about the resolve and the response.
It almost feels like a 2-for-1 because there were 2 games yesterday, and one was one in which you went up multiple scores on a team that hasn't trailed by double digits since this time last year.
Yeah.
And the other is one where you probably have some weaknesses or things that need to be worked on revealed to you in just 1 week's time.
No doubt. And I think that's what's great is that we can learn. Every single week provides an opportunity to be able to learn. And, just because, we didn't get that game done and we're, 2-1 instead of 3-0, the show goes on. We got a lot of football left. I still thought there was a tremendous amount of growth that occurred from week 2 to week 3. There were some situations that we can learn from, some opportunities, some different things where, hey, we got to be aware of this and be able to correct it. But there was also some things that, hey, this is a strong suit. Let's keep leaning into this. And I think our guys understand that as well. And it's not a zero-sum game for us.
Before we get to the breakdowns on the field goals, I got to call out the fact that Cardi had made 23 in a row prior to those last 2. And remembering the turmoil that was the Rams' existence in the kicking game before that stretch, that's something to appreciate.
Yeah.
That being said, I hate to say I reviewed every kick this season, but I did, and there seems to be a lot of personnel turnover, a lot of solution finding there. Is it personnel? Is it technique? Is it execution? Is it all those things?
Well, I think there's a lot of moving parts. We've had some, interior guys banged up and in and out of the lineup, so there has been some different people in spots that are key and critical for the execution of being able to protect in that phase of our kicking game. And so the answer is yes. And then there were some things that give credit to Philadelphia. They've always been an excellent, field goal block operation. They've always had stout, big players on the interior, and they did a good job with 2 of their guys of creating some penetration as you're looking at it from the kicking lens on the left side of our offensive line, on the left side of Alex Ward, if you will. And that's where the penetration came from on both the 36 and the 44-yarder that got blocked, and that's going to be an opportunity for us to learn from.
I don't know that full go special teams reps are in the cards for this stage of the season, but I'm sure our audience would love to hear. Yeah, we're going to drill that down this week and make sure we get that
that's going to be an
fixed.
emphasis. You can't, I think it's really important that when you have some negative experiences without solution-oriented techniques, fundamentals, that can cause the loss of morale. So we have to be able to address that. We have to be able to practice those things. And there will be an uptick in that point of emphasis because here's the reality. We're going to get that from Indianapolis. Yeah. You can't be naive to the fact that, we had those 2. There was some penetration on the 51-yarder that we hit earlier in the game where it could have been close. And so there's going to be a lot of urgency with addressing that. And I'm looking forward to watching us correct it.
It's a shame not only because of the loss, because Cardi had such a dominant game and your kick coverage unit did. He's weaponized that. I had the Eagles as a 15-yard line starting point off of your kickoffs yesterday.
That was huge. And it was amazing. He does such a great job with those liners, makes it hard to be able to field, still landing it in that landing zone, allows our guys to be able to get down there. And that starting field position, because of the way that play is, so much more percentage of those plays are being played out now as opposed to just kicking them deep like you saw us last year. It's been a weapon. It was an edge for us yesterday for sure.
All right, I want to talk red zone, and I mean red zone versus capping drives, and you're always so patient with me, so thanks for going down this road. But those are two different conversations, and I want to point that out in this edition of the show because the stats are going to say you were, 1 for 4 yesterday
That's
converting
right.
in the red zone, but I think that's misleading because there's high red and there's low red and there's inside the 20 versus 15 and 10. Where do you draw that line, first of all, in terms of what constitutes a short field?
Yeah, usually the red area is from the 12-yard line and in.
12,
you
okay.
know, and then you've got kind of your fringe, your strike zone area. But, for us, I think the NFL stats, what do they do? Is it the 20 and in? That's what I'm assuming. So you look at it and, there was a couple different things. We had 4 different trips to the red area. The biggest thing is we run it in on the first one. And that ends up getting called back, for a penalty. So now we've got 3rd and 10, and those are low percentage, plays right there. But we ended up scoring. It gets called back for a penalty. Then on the second one, we've got a routine 3rd down and 3 play from the 15-yard line that typically we're going to be able to execute that. We didn't, so we end up being able to kick the field goal off of that. And then the third one, it was off a versus sack fumble, 1-play drive where you end up hitting Kyron in the flat for a touchdown. There's our 1 out of the 4. And then the fourth one was, it's 3rd down and 2 on the 18-yard line. And, you feel really good about the opportunity to be able to get Davante, isolated down the field against a safety in kind of a one-on-one situation. And, we just didn't come down with it. But that ended up leading to a blocked field goal right there. But those were our 4 red zone possessions. Wanted to be able to come in and play the game aggressively. But I do think some of the narratives, the previous week against Tennessee, there was definitely some things that we could improve upon. A lot of tight red area where maybe give ourselves a chance to, to sequence it a little bit different or execute, and I'll never run away from that. But, yesterday, I don't necessarily think that was kind of the issue. You can really feel like, hey, we got to be able to ultimately, do it collectively. But the way that we came in, wanted to be able to play that game was, kind of how that unfolded.
And I'll be guilty of sounding like an apologist here, but last week we were talking about, should Sean have run it from an end goal situation? And you did.
Right.
And you punch it in, and Coleman's penalty tackling Campbell there gets one wiped off the board, and your only end goal situation is the 1-play touchdown sequence.
That's right.
So, I mean, I think that was something to hang your hat on, if anything. And what about Jay Witt running interference on 3 Eagles there on that?
Yeah, it was a great job.
Kyron?
He did a great job to be able to allow us to outflank with Kyron right there. Matthew delivers a good ball, and to go up 26-7 right there, you felt like you were in total control. But again, you got to be able to play and finish the game. And there's a lot of things that we can learn from, and we can't allow the disappointment of that result to take away from, the amount of things that we can really grow from, the amount of things that I thought we did improve on from week 2 to week 3. And, our expectations were to go in and win the football game. We're disappointed, but what we can't do is let the disappointment of that affect our ability to move forward with an excellent Colts team coming in here on Sunday.
Definitely agree with what you said about getting Davante on a safety and taking your shot there from the 18. But bigger picture, we know he's one of the best red zone weapons of his generation. And I think that's going to bear out over the course of this season for you. Is there a danger in becoming too reliant? Is there such a thing on targeting him too much because the efficiency hasn't been there yet? And I wonder if that's a product of the missed time with Matthew this summer.
I think we're working through that. I have total trust in really both of those guys. And so I think, like you and I both know that, we'll take those matchups. I feel really good. I feel like that's favorable for the Rams with Matthew and Davante working together. And we're always going to look at what are the best ways to put our players in successful outcomes. And whether that's throwing it, whether that's running it, but anytime that you can find a way to be able to get, Davante involved, that's going to be a good thing for the Rams. And, we'll continue to look for that as well as our other playmakers.
And then another longer lens thing. I know you drafted Terrance Ferguson in part because of his athleticism and red zone ability. Is it understandable for fans to be a little confused as to why your top pick in the draft is a healthy scratch?
For sure. But I think we've got tremendous depth at the tight end position. Got a guy in Tyler Higbee who's been doing it at a high clip for a long time. Colby Parkinson, I think, has taken tremendous steps, as has Davis Allen. And you really look at it, he did miss some critical time throughout training camp with the groin injury. He is going to be a guy that is going to be a big-time player for us. I have zero doubt. My confidence in him from when we drafted him to where we are now is even better. But you're always figuring out what is going to be best for the collective, what's best for our 48, for our football team. His time is going to come. He's doing a good job developing in the background, but we love Terrance Ferguson, but we really have a good group and want to try to be able to figure out, it's always a positive the problem to figure out the best ways to be able to balance that out, get guys involved, and ultimately move the football and score points, and how that's, reflected in some of our game plans. This is a long season. We got some time, and he's doing a great job in the meantime.
And over the course of a 17-game season, even the best quarterbacks are going to have an off week. And I don't know that was an off day necessarily for Matthew, but he went to the podium and said there's some throws that were not up to his standard, and that's probably the difference.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you love about Matthew is he's so refreshingly secure and accountable because of the standards that he has for himself. And he made a bunch of big-time throws as well. I thought he orchestrated a great 2-minute drive to be able to put us in a position to be able to win that football game and continue to add to his legacy. But he is such a stud. I feel so fortunate and blessed that he's the guy leading the way for us. And I think a lot of instances, his resolve and his mental toughness and just resilience will be reflected because of how he is and how that rubs off on the rest of the football team. And even though yesterday was disappointing in a lot of instances, we'll move forward the right way because we got a guy like him leading it.
On defense, you hold Saquon to 2.6 a carry and a long run of 12. I mean, that's a winning formula against any back, but especially him. Puna and Nate were two of the names we kind of tied to this game, and they performed. Who else contributed to that effort yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, I really thought our defense as a whole, I thought Jared Verse had his best game of the season so far. Byron Young continues to show why he's so consistent. Kobe Turner was excellent. Tyler Davis, I thought Puna Ford was big time. You really felt his presence yesterday. Fisk was outstanding. Landman did his thing. I thought our front as a whole played really well. I was really pleased with that. I thought we were able to, get into a lot of those known passing situations where we were able to attack, and then you credit them in the second half. Jalen made some great plays, made some great individual efforts where he's getting some guys in some isolated situations that they made plays. He was getting through some different progressions, but I thought really our front, and then those guys that you mentioned did an outstanding job, and that was a key and critical factor. The game unfolded where if you said that was how we wanted to be able to play it, there was a lot of things that worked in the favor of what we felt like was going to give us the best opportunity to ultimately win that football game. We had our chances and, ultimately just came up short.
Just as we sat in these chairs last week and praised the tackling effort, and it was sound in Tennessee, there were some breakdowns in the secondary in particular in those late game sequences. Yep. Fair criticism there?
Yeah, I think it's fair. And I think in a lot of those contested where you're catching a ball right in front of you, instead of trying to make a play on the ball, let's just make the tackle. So there's some good learning ops. It's not malicious right there. And then you're talking about some of the guys that are excellent after the catch. A.J. Brown does a great job. I give tip of the cap to him for, the enemy has a say. And so give these guys credit for being able to make some of those plays. But our guys, I just love the way that they look at themselves and they say, hey, where can I be accountable? And every one of these opportunities is a growth opportunity.
Quentin Lake, I think, leads the NFL in pass breakups. Had another great day.
He did.
Yesterday. How much has he shined in your secondary?
He's been awesome. He can do it all. He's everywhere. I think the energy that he plays with, the toughness, the competitiveness, the technique that you've seen him play with, the ownership of what the intent of these calls are. He's a total stud. If you just watch the way he plays snap in and snap out, that's what it looks like.
I don't think any two challenges or weeks are similar, but I look at the schedule and I see Hurts and Saquon, and next coming up Taylor, and then McCaffrey and Henry, all with varying degrees of mobile quarterbacks. Is there some pull through there? Is there some time on task that you think can benefit in terms of the blueprint you'll deploy? Yeah,
I think we're in the early parts. We'll just get started on the Colts, but you look at it. I think they punted once so far in their first 3 games. But they've been incredibly efficient. I've always thought Shane Steichen does a great job. Obviously, Jones is playing really efficient. And then when you see the highlights of Jonathan Taylor, he looks explosive as hell. And they've got great skill around him. They're playing tough up front. So you're hopeful that some of the stuff does translate. Every single week presents unique opportunities and challenges. And this one's going to be a big one for us.
You never like to be down 1 in the running game, but at least that's a sensation your group has been used to in terms of the challenges they're facing.
That's right. That's a good positive perspective to put on it.
Trying to find it there. Health-wise, how you doing? K-Dot, I know had to leave with cramps, but
yeah,
he's good to
he
go.
got some cramps. He ended up returning, finished the game. And so, I think typical bumps and bruises. We'll see how these guys come back on Wednesday. But that was a tough physical football game. I thought we played it the way that we wanted to. And, I'm hopeful that we'll have all hands on deck.
Including Steve back
There's
at
a
guard?
chance. We're hopeful to get him back out of practice, see how he does.
not to get into officiating, but only in terms of how you coach your players with respect to officiating. Does Puka need to stop flexing, or do officials need to be more aware
Yeah, I
of
think
who
I want to
he
get
is?
clarity on that. I think what the big intent is just making sure there's no misunderstanding. I know he wasn't doing that towards a player or whatever, but anything that looks like it's geared towards showing up the opponent, so any of those celebrations, making sure that it's clearly away from, your opponent, celebrating with each other, or away from the opponent. I'm not going to get into, how they saw it. I know what his intentions were, and they were not at all geared towards, trying to show anybody up. But those are things that I want to get clarity on so that our guys can still enjoy it, but do it within the framework of, not getting the 15-yard penalty.
And then can you coach Cam Kinchins to do anything differently in that middle of the field
I don't
play?
envy the spots that our players are in. I think you try to keep the head out of the tackle. Sometimes when that target changes just based on the moving target of some of the players that you're trying to be able to fit up in those positions, it's challenging. You just try to be able to educate them on the best techniques to be able to utilize in those bang-bang situations, but also understand it's challenging, empathize with them, but continue to educate and then allow them to be able to try to make, good full speed decisions, with their safety and health in mind, but also, keeping us away from those 15-yarders.
As you look ahead, I know you're only focused on Sunday against Indianapolis, but these 2 home games in 5-day windows, they've been a secret to the Rams' success here these last couple of seasons, the way that you've navigated them, the way that you prevailed in them. Here comes another one that feels like it could be a real inflection point in your season. What are the keys to playing in those condensed time frames?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just being able to, move the page. Our focus and concentration is exclusively on the Colts. And then once we get through the Colts, then it'll be on who we play after that. But I think it's, the efficiency of, Reggie and his group do such a good job with starting that recovery immediately after the game, figuring out what's the best way to maximize the above the neck work in a short week. And then, where are those physical times that we can get a little bit of work in? And then, hey, let's go kick it off and be ready to roll on Thursday. But, and where our focus is on being able to prepare as well as we can for the Colts.
And then lastly, I'm curious where you stand on what might be termed like quarterback reclamation projects, or like second or third chapters in a quarterback's career. And it's relevant this week because Daniel Jones is maybe not there yet, but is well on his way to having a really good season in Indianapolis. Sam Darnold we got exposure to last year. Obviously Baker Mayfield may be the best example, and is one whose kind of rejuvenation started here in Los Angeles. What is it about those people or that position where, hey, one rip at this thing as a pro may not be enough to really actualize what they're capable of?
Yeah, I think, so much. Football is the greatest team sport there is. I think, number one, it's a tremendous credit to these guys' resilience, their ability to be able to work through some challenging times and then get into a situation that, is conducive for them to be able to reach and realize their highest potential. And that's, all right, is this a system that's favorable to me? Am I surrounded by 10 other players? Football is the greatest team sport. I think guys are playing really well around him. He's had really good years. I mean, you look at Coach Dayball's first year, they end up winning a playoff game, get to the divisional round, did a lot of really good stuff. It's why he earned the contract that he did with the Giants. And so he's always had tremendous mobility. There's a reason why he was a top pick. He's shown really, good things throughout his career. And then are we able to put it together? Am I surrounded, by the right types of things to allow that to be able to come to fruition? And I think Shane Steichen's an excellent coach. I think he's got good personnel around him. I think they're doing a really nice job of being able to put him in situations that are conducive for his skills to come to life. And, I'm looking forward to diving a little bit deeper and hopefully, we can, put a stop on how efficient they've been.
Indeed. All right. Thank you for your time as always, Sean. Have a great week of preparation. And thank you for joining us for the Coach McVay Show presented by Microsoft Surface Copilot plus PC.